Welcome, everybody, to the first inaugural episode of Native Paranormal Crossroads. I am Andrew Bartzis, joined by my intrepid co host Laura Massey. The Rangers are here, and the very first Ranger to announce and tell us who he is on this inaugural episode is Jonathan. Jonathan, welcome to your inaugural episode. Let everybody know who you are, and what it took for you to get to this journey where you're doing your own podcast.
Okay, my name is Jonathan Redbird Dover. Um, the my name was my middle name comes from my Cheyenne heritage. I am part Southern Cheyenne, and I'm what they now call Apache Tribe of Oklahoma. But back in the day, they called it Kiowa Apache. Which is separate from Kiowas, and they're considered Plains Apaches. Uh, and then I'm also part Navajo, and I'm part Filipino. So when we get into it on my Navajo side, um, clan wise, I am Kia'ani, and I believe there's some Red House clan in there on my father's side. On my mother's side, I am Kiowa Apache and Cheyenne. And I think there might be some Arapaho in there. On that side, I'm my grandfather was supposed to be the arrow keeper for the tribe. He handed it off because if you're the arrow keeper, it's almost like a priest, high priest position, and you don't go anywhere. You stay at the house. You tend to the arrows. You food is brought to you, and that kind of stuff. So he wanted to travel. He didn't want to be around, so he handed it off to some other people. Um, on the Cheyenne side, I'm also a direct descendant of Chief White Antelope, who was killed at the Sand Creek Massacre, along with other relatives that were there. Um, Navajo side, my great grandmother was part of the Long Walk, and as a little girl, she escaped and made it home from Bosque Redondo. On the Filipino side, uh, I have my grandfather there was actually in the 1917 ish, was a Filipino scout for the U.S. military. Uh, Ended up on the army transport ships of that time, bringing doughboys back from World War One back to the States, and that's how we got the name Dover. There were two people with the same name. My name should have been Cruz, and there were two sailors on the boat, both with the same last name. And they used to grab my grandfather when the other guy would get in trouble and throw him in the brig. So when they were in England, he asked for permission to change his name, and the captain said, "Okay, your first name is going to be Jack." In those days, every sailor was called Jack. That's where you get Cracker Jack, which is a good sailor. Uh, and then the he says, "And your last name is going to be Dover." They happened to be in the port of Dover, England, at the time. So that's how I
Well, at
got.
least you weren't. At least you weren't Benjamin Dover.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard that one all my life. So, at any rate, I blundered into law enforcement. Didn't know what a ranger was. The only question they asked me during my interview was, "How would you feel about somebody threatening your life or the life of your family?" I said, "Well, I'll cut their ears off at 200 yards with a 300 Savage." And they said, "You're hired." Next thing I know, I was in the police academy and told if I don't make it through the police academy, I'll be terminated. And I made it. And here I am today after 31 years in law enforcement, along with many different agencies and different specialties. And so uh, I'm here today.
In your 31 years law enforcement, what is one thing that still makes you go, scratch your head like, what the hell is that?
It would have to be I was traveling early in the morning. The sun was just barely coming up. I was looking at the road in front of me. It was going for miles and miles in front. Looked in the rearview mirror, miles and miles, straight road behind me, as far as you could see in the dark. I blinked, and as I opened my eyes, I was approximately 15 miles further down the road. Now, this road goes up and down, it goes curves, it travels along the edge of cliffs. And when I got to my destination, I was 45 minutes early. And to this day, I can't account for that time. I have people tell me, oh, you were abducted. Um, I don't know. I've had other scientists like people tell me um, you were obviously trapped in the event horizon of a microscopic black hole and it changed time. That was the one that really stood out to me. I don't have an explanation for it, but if you do the time distance calculations that you did when you were in school, um, I would have had to been traveling well over 120 miles an hour to make that kind of time. And you don't do that traveling through Hopi country because they will. It doesn't matter if you're law enforcement; they will pull you over and cite you. So
Yeah,
you,
not to mention doing curves at 120 miles an hour doesn't work.
yeah. So you tend to mind your p's and q's and do the speed limit, and that's what I did. So to this day, it's a mystery.
It's like what you would call a glitch in the matrix,
Could
or
be a
what?
glitch in the matrix, or it could just be his moment where he slipped from one world to another and
Yeah,
he gained some time back.
and I
That's
didn't
why I
even
asked, what is your thing that makes you go,
and I didn't even get to see Keanu Reeves either. So
yes, or taste the fake steak. Alrighty, our second paranormal ranger is the intrepid Stanley. Stanley, welcome to your inaugural podcast.
Hello, everybody. Um, for me, I was born on the Navajo reservation, and I have an older sister and some younger sisters in Oklahoma. I was born in Fort Defiance at the old hospital and spent at least my first 2 years on the reservation. Um, Soon, my mother moved back to Oklahoma, where her family is from, and I was pretty much raised there, going to school there. Um, me and my older sister would travel back and forth to Arizona, the Navajo Nation, and spend our summers there on the Navajo reservation. I finished and graduated high school in Oklahoma, and I went to college, junior college in Lawrence, Kansas at Haskell. At that time, it was an Indian Junior College. Today, it's a university. So graduated school there, and at that time I had began working with the Navajo Nation with their Parks and Recreation section, just doing construction labor jobs, and eventually went to school at Fort Lewis College in Durango, and then later went to school at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And it was while I was there that I was contacted by the Parks and Recreation Department to request me to come back to the Navajo Nation to become a Navajo Ranger. They were needing a ranger in Monument Valley. At that time, they were, and really throughout the years, they've had difficulty in keeping rangers out there simply because of the remoteness of Monument Valley. And so I thought about it, and I have always had a desire to work in law enforcement. Growing up as a kid in Oklahoma, I played cops and robbers, and watching Starsky and Hutch and these different Adam 12 and different things. And so um, I grew up on a ranch there part time, and riding motorcycles and things, and having really uh, the Oklahoma countryside as my playground with my older cousin Rusty. And so eventually, after high school and college, I'm back here. Went to the U.S. Indian Police Academy and did my time there and graduated, and immediately came back and began boots on the ground, working with the likes of John Dover and other rangers who taught me what it was that what it meant to be a ranger, and working in archaeology, protection, the fish and game enforcement, livestock enforcement, forestry. Really, the rangers are really a law enforcement catch-all for all of the natural resources and even the public safety for the Navajo Nation. So came back and began doing that, working with the tribe. My father is full-blood Navajo. My mother's Cherokee. She's also part Irish. Um, um, they're both gone now, but for me and my Navajo, I would say Yate Shike, Dosh Dene, Stanley Milford Jr., Unesha, Ushi, Bashishchin, Bilagana, Doshiche, Samuel Estill Stacy. It's my grandfather. Uh, uh, um, my Che, Doshiche, my Chanele would be Leo Milford. And so that's me kind of in a nutshell.
Wonderful. And same question to you. What are in all your years of service? What has been one of those things that makes you scratch your head and still go, hmm?
Well, um, I would think it, later on, as John and I worked together, we were assigned to a special projects unit, and we basically officially investigated what would be termed paranormal or supernatural cases. And I think that's what made the job that John and I did unique. Yeah, we did a lot of other dignitary protection with a lot of famous celebrities and actors and stuff. But really, actually being, you know, a part of something that is fictionalized, like with the X Files, John and I actually did that. We actually investigated those things officially. And in part of that time, one of the investigations I did led to what is termed an apport, where you have an object that materializes or moves or is in some way manipulated. And in one of the investigations I did, which was a haunting case or haunting witchcraft involved case, there was coins would materialize out of thin air. They would simply out in front of you several feet. There's nothing in that space. A coin would fall out of thin air into the floor. And in that investigation, there was a total of 65 coins. The activity actually followed me to my home and to some of the other investigators during that time, different activity. But the coins would happen here at my house, and the coins to this day still apport. In the actual investigation, I witnessed at least 10 times with my own eyes where coins fall out of nothingness, out of thin air, not being not being manipulated or something by an outside person or anything like that. And um, so I think with the actual investigations and within the paranormal world, and also the job of a ranger, that was um, probably the most prolific phenomenon experience. I've seen this thing people call Bigfoot. I've seen what people refer to as a skinwalker, you know. But I think the coins thing changed a lot of different perspective that I have on the world and the universe after that. So
Incredible. And our final paranormal mistress of the universe, Michele Meiners. Michele, welcome to your inaugural podcast.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Nice to be on your show. Um, I my show. Yes,
Your
your
show.
show.
nice. It's great to be on our show, the Paranormal Rangers. Interestingly enough, I have a background in journalism and in investigation, and I started at a young age of 19. I did not cover paranormal activity until I was, well, maybe 6 years ago. My ancestral background is I'm Navajo, Pawnee, and Chippewa. Ojibwe is the Chippewa. Pawnee, I am from the clan of the Skidee Indians who hold the buffalo sky charts that we have. And that was the only tribe that was given those sky charts to be overseers and takers of that tribe. The the Pawnee consist of different other clans, and we were the only ones that could hold that. So that kind of has that tie into um, being a sort of an intergalactic communication connection to the solar system. The other one is I'm Navajo, and Jonathan and I come from the same clan, Kiani, and that's my clan as well. Um, that was my mother's maternal line. Interestingly enough, I was asked 6 years ago to go up to the Uinta Basin and get on a special project with a business partner of mine, and we started exploring the area, and all of a sudden I find myself having these extraordinary experiences within the paranormal world, and I wasn't familiar with it because I had grown up as a child having, yeah, ancestral connections through spirit of my ancestors coming to me, and I thought that was a normal thing. But when I started having connections to other areas in the Uinta Basin, it became an awakening and opening for me to understand the paranormal world. And it took some kind of adjustments for me, as some of them were not that pleasant. Some of them were quite negative, and I had to understand that part of it to understand the paranormal world and such. And so my background, I started to investigate and interview people in the area and got over 400 interviews, in which at some point I will put that in a book, which is really interesting because the area is now a hot spot, as you know, many of you know, for a couple of television shows that are now being produced there. And it is in a remarkable area. I have been working with the Ute tribe in such a way that I'm learning a little bit about the area and learning about the nature of the Uinta Basin and its extraordinary experiences up there. And I got to know Jonathan and Stan through a friend of mine while they were up there filming a series. And it was just just by coincidence that we really connected and we had similar stories to share with one another. So that's basically my background.
Wonderful, Michele. Thank you so much. And then you brought up what today's inaugural topic is ancestral connections. What does that mean from the native perspective? How does that define? How does the rest of the world see it and maybe misunderstand it? What myths or concepts would you like guys to clear up and make sure of an understanding what ancestral connections are from the Paranormal Rangers inaugural broadcast, Native Paranormal Crossroads? where we get to mix these ideas and we get some truths out there.
Well, interestingly enough, we along the way, having this being our ancestral connection, we do have a close tie to our ancestors. Uh, Jonathan and Stan spoke about their connection to the different tribes that they belong to. And the indigenous really believe that our ancestors come in the form of orbs. And my mother had an experience, and I think I've shared this before on a show, where my mom thought it was her uncle coming down the road in his car. And basically, as she was a young girl around 5 years old, she basically looked at the lights that were coming towards them because they were rounding about down there. My great grandmother lived in the Hogan on the reservation there near Chinle, Lukachukai area. And so it's a very remote area. So one of the interesting thing was my mother had asked the question, "Oh, here comes Uncle coming to visit us." And as the lights came closer, the lights split apart and went in different directions. And my great grandmother told my mother to shush and he should pay respect. And my mom goes, "Well, what was that? What was that? I thought it was Uncle." And she goes, "No, but we have to show reverence because those are our ancestors coming in the form of light." So that's one of the connections we have to our ancestors.
Have you got photos as well with orbs, with the orbs?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I've got a lot since I've been on the investigation and
yeah.
you
Be
just have
great.
to honor them. Yeah, you have to honor
Yes,
it.
be great to see some of those. Yeah, lovely.
Love to.
Carry on. Sorry. Sorry. So what about the connection with the Star People? Because we're going right back to your ancestors, original ancestors for all you three. So what are the beliefs of the Navajo related to being the Star People? Because we constantly read like in National Geographic about coming from Siberia and so on. What are the Navajo beliefs of where your ancestors come from and the Star People?
Well, the Navajo believe that the star people have come to them in the past and they've imparted knowledge. And this is a pretty normal thought process out here. In investigating UFO cases, we ask them, why don't you report this to some group like Mutual UFO Network, MUFON? And they tell us, well, if we investigate, we have a bunch of investigators come up here, there's going to be a bunch of people standing around holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and the star people won't come back anymore, and we don't want that. So it's it's just one of these deals where um, it's accepted that there are lights in the skies, that there are UFOs, that there are aliens walking around on the ground. Uh, in the past, the Navajo have a dance called the Yebiche dance. So the Yebiche or the Yei are actually considered gods that have come to the Navajos, and so every um, fall, winter, they have dances, and the Yebiche represent the star people that have come. There's usually about 10, even 12 Yebiche dancers. What's interesting is that traditionally, the last dancer in the group is always called the clown, and he goofs up and makes fun. Everybody laughs at him, but he actually represents to the Navajo what are called the five-fingered people, which is you and me. So these are the people that can't listen to instruction. They're told don't war with each other, don't do all these terrible things, and they do the opposite. And so by the holy beings, we are considered the clowns. And I think it's kind of appropriate, judging from our past recent history. So that's how the star people figure into this. If you look at other tribes, they have similar backgrounds in their histories. The Hopis have kachinas, and those kachinas were actually designed for little kids so that they would recognize the different deities that were around. And it turns out there's 250 to 350 separate kachinas. So if you want to collect them, you're going to be collecting for a long time. And each one of these represents a different being that they've had contact with. So that tells me that they've had contact with 250 to 350 other species, uh, which is just mind boggling when you think about it.
It does seem to me, John, does seem to me, John, everything you're telling me is beyond a belief system. It's actually in your DNA, isn't it? It's in your knowingness and it's in your wisdom.
Well, you can't ignore it. We talked about this in another episode where the government came in and basically took over and decreed that we would be Christians or Catholics or Mormons or whatever. Religion was forced on the people. Um, we were literally abducted and taken to Pennsylvania and other states and put in boarding schools to teach us how to think differently, and with the idea that we would be assimilated into society. And we found out that society is not a melting pot, it's a stew pot. And we were able to maintain our identity, and we didn't go away. In fact, Navajos are the largest tribe in the United States, and they are about 500,000 at this point. I think the last census had it around 480,000, and that's tribal members. Other tribes are expanding, and so we're by a long shot 574 tribes in the United States that are recognized by the government. There's a bunch of us, and we're all different. We from tribe to tribe, it would be like if you went from France to Germany. That's how different it is. There's different languages, different customs, different cultural backgrounds, um, different emergence stories, whole thing. So, uh, and you can imagine that when 1492 rolled around, there were probably about 5,000 Native American tribes back then.
Wow. So, what else could you add about the ancestral connection? I remember in one of our previous shows, you talked about a grandmother who had said they wouldn't tell any about the UFOs that were in the area because the ancestors wouldn't come again. Explain that type of relationship that the people of the land have with the ancestors and what it means to them.
Well, the people out here are very guarded about what they see. We've had a young girl visiting her grandmother when two disc shaped craft showed up outside the Hogan and hovered in the doorway. They were about 6 foot, 7 foot in diameter, silently hovering. The girl got really excited. She just says, "Grandma, Grandma, look outside! Look at the flying saucers!" Right in front of the door. And the grandmother didn't even look up, didn't miss a beat weaving, and she just said, "Oh, they're always around here," like it's no big deal. And what I find just fascinating is that you run into Navajos that are very, very elderly. They know of constellations that we can't see today. And you wonder how they know about star systems and constellations and things. So there is definitely a connection there of some kind, and we honor that when we do these investigations.
Stan, is there anything you'd like to add in about ancestral connections in general?
Well, I think that the work John and I have done throughout the years of being a ranger and being privileged to see and work with and these archaeological ruins and the pictographs and petroglyphs that we've been allowed to explore and visit. And you see in these depictions, of course, a lot of it is up to the individual that to interpret these things, these images. But I think in that you look at these cultural representations by the Fremont peoples. Uh, you see these designs and images, and John and I have had friendships with people like the late Clifford Mahooty of the Zuni tribe, who imparted knowledge to us that these depictions show a relationship between what was termed, in really the English description of star people and the people that preside on these lands today. There is a direct connection, and you see some of the comments coming in on the podcast, and people are seeing things, they're witnessing things, they're watching these objects in our skies, and things are happening. Recently, in recent months, we experienced the uh, UAPs or UFOs that pilots had encountered and even engaged with, and to my knowledge, they shot some of these things down. And then you have events, out in Las Vegas, and events in Miami, Florida, and people. There's things that are happening around the world. We don't hear about all of the things that happen, but in this day and time when we have the technology like what we're communicating on right now, the cell phones and laptops and the internet, we can convey information and messages from where we're at clear around the globe in real time. And I think we're in a unique position today to be able to share this information. John and I have worked, and Michelle too, with these productions. And so we're receiving information that we're taking and really digesting that information. And we're also taking that information and seeing how it relates to how we were brought up traditionally with traditional information on our grandparents and our great grandparents, and how that uh, how that is very important and very um, it plays a big role in our lives today. So
And that role it plays is not just a physical role, but a spiritual role and a teacher role, and that the various descendants have different purposes, whether they're in the afterlife or not. They have different purposes in the cultural growth.
very much true. I mean, John talked about earlier. We talked about the long walk and uh, where we've come since those days, and those individuals, many of them paid a heavy price so that we can sit here today and be a part of this project that we're working on, and to share information. And I feel very blessed and very honored to be a part of this. And I think it's very critical. I think we're at a point, some people would term an awakening that's happening. And I think that is happening. And I think we need to, as a people, need to get away from the violence and hatred and that kind of thing, and be more open-minded and receptive of other people's ideas and other people's teachings, so that we can live, uh, as in Navajo term is Hojo, or harmony, living in balance, or walking in beauty. And I think we need to get back to that type of thinking instead of fighting each other, especially like what we're seeing in America right now. We need to stop doing that. We need to support each other's ideas. Be 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 glad we're all Americans and we live in this free country, a beautiful country. It's so diverse. The beauty in our country is the diversity. We can travel. I can travel hours in any direction, and I can have different foods and different music, and that's the beauty of life. So anyway, that's my thinking.
So we have had our first cat sighting of the inaugural podcast. What was the name of the cat, John?
You're echoing, Andrew.
It's somebody else's mic. You're muted, Jonathan.
Sorry about that. My cat's photobombing me. Her name is Sachiko. We call her Sachi. She's
Get used to your cat photobombing you. It will happen frequently.
yeah, she's Blue Point Siamese.
Well, we're going to make her an official ranger.
Yeah, I got to chase her out of my equipment. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Andrew, it's really interesting. What Stan was saying. We used to be so connected to our ancestral, the sky people. And when I go out and speak, I talk about the connection between the Pawnee Skiddy charts to the Aurora Borealis is considered the solar system of which we've come from. And what's really interesting, these deities that they were talking about, the Yebiches and such, we have deities in that tribe as well, of my tribe. They came down and taught us how to plant, to make our homes, where to plant our agriculture, how to set up the ceremony systems, the traditions, the blessings, the weather. These were given us directly as a direction in our world, and how to treat each other and how to be loving and kind and not warlike. And we do have these deities in our religions, and that is the connection that's there today. Even I think this is why we get visited, and because we see it in forms of modern day context, we try to make it something that it's not. And Laura, on another show that we did, had said this is their way of coming forth, whether we go to another dimension, we're feeling it within our spirits, or we're actually physically being taken there. This is the connection, and we can't be afraid of it because this is the way we used to live and dwell.
John, Stan, you guys were talking before about the awakening. Some will awaken and some will remember. And those that remember the past will know the ancestors have always been there, waiting for us to go through the journey of I awaken to them or I remember them. And in that unique journey where we all can share a remembering and awakening that has a common sense that we have a past and a history that is not lost. It is simply waiting for us to rediscover it. Rediscover that it's not need to be written in books. It's an oral history stored within the DNA and wisdom of everyone that is out there. All the oral teachers and historians who came before can still speak to us through the ancestral connections. And it's a way for the wisdom to become forms of conduits among certain people, certain tribes, and certain places where the wisdom isn't doled out. It is given to those that respect it and use it for its right purpose to create peace, happiness, long living lives, and the ability to pursue the unlimited point of view without creating violence for others.
So I think I said earlier that would be a way of saying it's actually in our knowingness.
Yep.
It's actually there for us to tap into.
Laura, the other thing we have to remember is language. We're losing our language, and our oral history is taught through that language. And I mean, Jonathan on another show and Stan had said that it's being taught in the Navajo schools, but where, are the tentacles? Are they being taught to the natives who are urbanized out there living in cities? And the answer to that is no, because I'm one of those. I never learned the language, tried to go back and learn it, and it was very difficult. And today I really appreciate Stan sharing in Navajo this lineage, and that was really nice to hear to my ear, because I used to hear my mother speak in Navajo to keep so that we wouldn't know the secrets with her sister, the gossip. But it's a beautiful language, and I wish I had learned as a child a little bit more so I could understand those teachings, because some of those teachings are done in our language. So that's another connection that we have to ancestors.
So, how do ancestors fit in with paranormal investigations?
Well, one of the things that I see with how they fit in, we have to be culturally sensitive. Uh, you don't just go into an investigation and say, "Okay, I'm going to come in and save the world," um, because maybe the world doesn't need to be saved. Uh, but you have to have that cultural sensitivity to know where the boundaries are, and you don't want to offend people, and that's really easy to do, as we know from just regular everybody out there. People get offended. Um, how long have people been told you're crazy? What you saw was Jupiter, what you saw was Venus, what you saw was swamp gas. Uh, it just goes on and on and on, and you have this idea of ridicule, that the government actually had a system of ridicule for people that saw UFOs and saw paranormal things. And our media makes fun of it. They do cartoons, showing, a crazy alien in a little bubble spaceship, flying over. And they don't realize that it's just it that's the nature. So hang on, I'm gonna have to go away just for a minute. Stan, you want to pick it up from there? Um, my battery is saying it's dying here.
Well, I think, for each one of us, we come from a different place and we come from different backgrounds. Um, but I think the knowledge that has been imparted by our grandparents and our parents, and um, I think it's always important to take that information in consideration as we move forward with things like the paranormal. John and I have learned a lot from a lot of different sources over the years, organizations like MUFON, even from investigators from Robert Bigelow's organization. Um, they assisted us and they taught us a lot during that time that we were out there working with the Navajo Nation. And so I think in this day and time that, you know, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a single family throughout the world that doesn't have relatives or family members that have not had some type of supernatural or paranormal experience. Some family member having encountered orbs or hauntings or extraterrestrial beings. And I think if you were able to, you'd find out that it's actually more common than we can even remotely believe or understand. These things, me and my sister have a saying of paranormal is normal, and I truly believe that. I think man uh, being here on this earth really has inherited by nature a paranormal world. And we experience activity from UFOs and visitors from other dimensions and other places. And it's really coming to a head today because of things like internet and things like cell phones, where we can capture video in real time and transmit that video around the globe. I mean, so I think it's very important, like what we're doing today, that we're sharing these ideas, we are sharing these experiences to others, that people are experiencing things. You just need to know that you're not alone, and you certainly aren't crazy. These things have been happening for a long, long, long time. So
So your ancestors would have considered it normal rather than paranormal.
very much so. It's like what John says about the elderly woman experiencing a UFO just outside the Hogan, and the young girl is kind of shocked or kind of traumatized by it, but the grandmother's attitude is that I've seen these, for a long time. They've always been there. It's no big deal, you know.
So I got a question for our ancestors. How do the little people fit into the ancestral connection, or are they a different mythology or mythos?
Well, the little people, let me answer that question. I've been working with the Ute Nation. The Ute Nation and the Shoshone Nation that's their traditional beliefs that the little people come in and they assist them in their lives. And there are, if you go on the Uinta Basin, there are little homes that are on trees on the reservations made out of, they look like birdhouses, and they're depicting that these little people, they give them gifts of of certain things, and that they bless their homes, they take care of them, they're protectors. In the Shoshone myth, they are not good. They would come and they would hurt their crops, they would hurt things. So you've got two traditional meanings of the little people from two different tribes. Although they live by each other, but the little people are very prevalent in Uinta Basin. Uh, Navajo people, we believe in the ant people. So that's another depiction.
So where I come from Geauga County, Ohio, from the native Geauga, Cuyahoga, Lake Erie Indians, the little people were a very popular concept all throughout the different native communities that were here, the part of the Algonquin Nation, pre settlers crossover. And so they have many little tiny house concepts like what you're talking about, spread everywhere. Little tiny little
Hmm.
things everywhere. You can find them still left over in the forest 300 years later.
And
You
they're
know, John
preferred.
and I,
Go ahead,
John,
Stan.
John and I traveled to Scotland back in 2014, and while we were there, we met people from the local people. We met people from Ireland. Of course, Ireland is well known for uh, talk of fairies and leprechauns and these different type of little people that are viewed in their culture. And but out here in the Southwest, just like John mentioned earlier, the Hopis have references to little people. Our friend Clifford Mahooty, who's gone now, but he talked about different tribes and different peoples that talked of little peoples, and uh, so it's similar, you know, to like what we see with the phenomenon of Bigfoot. Bigfoot, there's references to this thing that people call Bigfoot around the globe. The Yeti and the Sasquatch and Swamp Ape and Yowie and all these references, but it's essentially describing physically a very similar thing. And so I think, you know, you look at NASA, and astronauts have viewed our little blue marble here where the earth really isn't that big. It's finite. We only have so much water, so much air, and I think that no matter where you are on the globe, there are these different phenomena. If you go back in history, I mean, going back thousands of years, there's still references to things that were unexplainable, and it's there if you look. You know.
Even in China, Vietnam, you have references and actual pictures of little people, like pygmy styles from Africa, people that are 3 feet tall, whole clans of thousands that would live in a small little village. So if a 3 foot person still exists, how a 1 foot person could still exist or less, and that concept is repeated throughout cultures throughout the world.
It
So
is.
my next question here is, the whole point of Native Paranormal Crossroads is to bring people's ideas together, help the understanding of what culture is, stop a cultural appropriation. So, what can you give when it comes to cultural appropriation? What's right? Ways for people to deal with it, and for those that have the deeper belief system, what wisdom can you impart to them when it comes to culture?
Respect.
Well, exactly. What you said right there is key because we're all human beings, aside from cultural differences. We're all human beings. We all have blood flowing through our veins, and uh, it is important, the idea and the concepts of cultural appropriation. But I think we're here as human beings to learn from each other, just like this very podcast we're doing right here. We're here to share information and ideas for the betterment of mankind, for the whole human race. And so I think it's important to respect our differences and the beauty in each other's culture and learn positive things, but not to try to take those things and say, "Oh, it's mine," and try to manipulate it and control it for the wrong reasons.
Cool, very, very cool. All right, so Joe, I have Joe put a picture up here, and this is one of the native Navajo pictographs. And you guys were talking before about translating the pictographs. You care to share what you see in this pictograph and maybe kind of translate it for the audience here?
There's the
I think
medicine
that would be
wheel.
Fremont for one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fremont.
there's a lot of information here. Um,
Yeah.
when you look at this, it's actually a petroglyph. It
Okay.
looks like somebody's taken chalk and outlined everything, which is really bad because the chalk gets into the surface of the stone, which is usually sandstone or limestone, and it stays in there. Um, so if you're out in the field, you see a petroglyph, something that's carved into the rock, please do not put chalk on it. Don't put a sheet over it and hit it with a paintbrush, or a roller uh, to get that thing off. What I would recommend for people to do is if you have an iPhone, you can get a program called Scanniverse that will actually give you a 3D rendering of what you're looking at, and and you can look at it from all different angles. But what I'm seeing here, of course, you see horses. So this is sometime after the 1600s when the Spanish brought horses into the area, and the guy there is hunting with a bow. So that puts it in an earlier time. Uh, you see depictions of what looks like large figures with antlers or horns on their head or some kind of headdress. Um, that they're up higher indicates that they have a supremacy. The Of course, the feet that are in there, if you notice, many of them have different. Some have four toes, some have more, and so these would be actual uh, either clan symbols or possibly a recording of Bigfoot. Um, when you look at a panel like this, you look at it in its entirety. It'll tell you which direction they came from, clan symbols of who came through, what kind of game is available in the area, and sometimes where that game can be found, where water sources are. The spirals that you see are usually an indicator of migration. We haven't reinterpreted that to talk about dimensional portals. So there's a lot that's happening. We still don't know the language or how to read these things, but they were pretty universal back in the day. And you see pictures of humans that are very, very small compared to the giants up there. Um, I'm not sure what that wagon wheel thing is. Looks like
That's a
somebody.
medicine wheel. That's a medicine wheel.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Usually medicine wheels are 4 spokes, but this one has got 6. So yeah, there's some religious connotation going on there. Um, the rock itself can be used to show map reliefs, and sometimes prominent points on the rock itself will be used within that deal to show the area. Like I said, waters, creeks, things like that. So there's lots and lots, and successive groups that would come through would leave their mark on it, and other clans would come in just like taggers today that do graffiti, and they might mark out a different clan that used to be there.
John, did you say you'd seen some with what could be UFOs on them?
Oh yeah, we've seen some with what looked like craft on there. We've also seen some that had depictions of parrots, and they've actually found in Anasazi and Cliff Dweller places, they found the remnants and feathers of parrots, which indicate that they had ties all the way down into South America. Also with the obsidian that had green in it. That's only found in the area of Mexico. We found shell bracelets that came from, oceans, whether it came from the Gulf or whether it came from the Pacific, that were buried with some of the ancient peoples. So there's a lot of trade going on, and there's a lot of things, that are moving back and forth. And then you have all this otherworldly stuff taking place. You have little people, you have, UFOs, dimensional gates. We think that in the ancient days, they had the ability to use dimensional gates to travel. And it's a theory that we looked at, and we haven't found anything to disprove that yet.
What do you think you see on the left-hand side, like towards the middle? It looks like an insect type being, with the hands. You see in the left, in the middle, towards the left. That's interesting, isn't it? What that is.
The Navajos have stories of insect people in one of the other worlds that they populated. So insect people, that's normal. But even today, you have UFOs that have praying mantis type and insectoid types of creatures. So it doesn't surprise me. It's just normal to see this kind of stuff.
Modern day reference is called mantoids. I've heard that species talked about. He's talking about the ant people. They refer to the mantoid.
You've talked about this a lot, haven't you? The insectoid beings. I've heard that a lot throughout the years. You talking about them.
Yep, coming from the Hollow Earth, as well as many other places too. They were a culture seeder group. Joel, I put another set of group of pictures inside the chat for you to grab. There's a slider over there that's got a bunch of different ones. We're going to be doing a future show on pictographs, But part of this inaugural show is to show the breadth of knowledge and wisdom that everyone has here and give you guys a little bit of a sample of all the things, the potential things that can come up with every show.
Yeah, just
One thing that John and I agree very much on is that a lot of times you hear the term rock art, and to us, this wasn't intended, as a form of artwork. It's an archive of information from earlier peoples, either about events or an incident or something that was going on at that time. And one thing to consider is that with each of these different panels that you see, um, they have evolved over the years. So different peoples may have departed information at a different time uh, on a particular event. So um, anyway,
Joel, can you make the one you got up there big?
yeah, I can see it. Again, you have the circles, the concentric circles within each other. I don't consider that a spiral. Those are used in calendars. A stick can be placed up or some kind of marker where at certain times of the year, say the equinoxes, uh, the shadow would fall in the middle of that, and it would actually tell them uh, when you could plant and when the seasons would come about. And most of them were like the one at Fajada Butte is very accurate. Uh, in there, you show corn, uh, the little figure, uh, the horns. Those are, I mean, they could be any kind of depiction. That person that's standing there has a backpack on, and you usually see that associated with Kokopelli. Kokopelli is a figure that has a backpack and plays a flute, and that flute he seduces women, so he is a sign of fertility. Um, so in this case, you see the feathers coming off of that thing. Or you'd see with the Native American bustle today, and he's dressed up. He's wearing his best clothes. He is carrying something in his hand. That could be some kind of staff. It could also be what they consider an atlatl, which is a device, a wooden piece that you would affix kind of a short spear to and use it to throw. And with that, you could throw much, much further and more accurately. Um, so it's a device for hunting. So yeah, there's a lot of icons in this thing. You see the deer hooves at the bottom of the guy's feet, just below the concentric circles, and you see some dots within the circles too. I don't know if those are bullet holes. It's very possible they are, and that's what I think they are. And then there's
a
some
lot
more.
of times,
Yeah,
a lot of times you'll have these depictions of the concentric circles, and people will actually, like John said, they'll use a firearm and be shooting at these actual things like that with a bullseye target. And it's a shame that people will do that kind of thing, but it does occur. But I will point out the difference that John made a reference to the spiral designs. No, a spiral design will start at a certain small point at the center, and it'll work its way out to the outer edge in one complete connected line, as opposed to what we just seen, where you have an inner circle and a next circle. Each of those circles are completed circles, so there's a little bit difference, and I think that they are meant to be interpreted completely differently, like what John referenced.
John, don't we call those man in the maze?
Man in the maze is usually seen down in the southern part of Arizona, and you have a lot of maze imagery in pottery and different stuff like that. So that's usually associated with Hohokam and other ancient peoples in southern Arizona.
Okay, we've got another image up here. Joel, can you bring that to full size?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, here we're seeing again the rider on the horse. It looks like has. You notice the hats on there. So this is a depiction of probably United States military coming in, and they have reins on the horse. In the past, they didn't use reins, they didn't use saddles. They just hopped on the bareback and rode them. So this is probably around the 1800s that those were made. You have the figure in the bottom with the horns, and he's large, so there's something uh, that they meant it to stand out. The little hourglass thing over on the side, that's a stylized depiction of hoof marks. So you'll usually see those indicating the direction or what type of game is in the area. You have a figure standing next to there with some kind of a headdress on, and you have another weird looking thing over on the left that that almost looks like he's got four fingers, but he's got a really strange arrangement going on his head. But if you've ever seen Hopi Kachinas, you'll see that kind of headdress occasionally on some of their Kachinas. So there's lots going on here.
And
Is
then
it
we
a
got one
buffalo?
more.
Is it, sorry, is it the buffalo hunt with the guy? 'Cause it looks like a buffalo right in front, the very front guy.
That could be a buffalo, and it wouldn't surprise me. Buffaloes were all over the plains, and it would be kind of ridiculous to think that they confined the area only to the plains. Uh,
Right.
I've actually seen buffaloes that were gifted to the Navajo Nation break out of their containment, and they were all over Fredonia, north of the Grand Canyon. They've multiplied. They're in the Grand Canyon area. They're just everywhere, and they're actually becoming a problem. So, but I've seen buffalo just put their head down and go right through a five-strand barbed wire fence.
I have a buffalo story for you. I was flying back from San Francisco, and I think it was 2005. And you could look it up, Chesterland, Ohio. Buffalo rams into police vehicle and car. Two buffaloes escaped their area, and just for 3 days terrorized this little small town I lived in, tipping vehicles over, ramming into police cruisers and everything. Okay, quite amusing. 3 days they were free to do whatever they wanted.
They're just getting a little revenge for all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buffalo karma.
Joe, we got one more image. There we go. You make that full size.
The turkey tracks is the one thing that I do see within this particular depiction, and you may have something that is referencing bear tracks or something of that nature. So I think there is references to the wildlife of that particular area that they're seeing
Okay.
and recording.
Wow.
Then deer with antler. Is that corn also?
Well, corn plays a very significant role with the Navajo people, the Hopi people, the other southwestern tribes. Corn is very sacred to those peoples. And the depictions you see here of the animals are that these animals play a significant and sacred role uh, in their lives.
There
Yeah,
are
the
also
most.
footprints. If you can see the footprints to
Yeah,
the right on the photo.
Yeah,
yeah. 6 toes.
I thought that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a tendency to be very conservative in our um, in what we say these things could be. Yes, we could say they're Bigfoot prints. They lend itself to that. They could also be bear prints, um, but we will always lean toward a conservative look at these things, um, and understand that this was part of our job as rangers. So my specialty for 27 years of my work was archaeological law enforcement, and Stan spent 23 years doing the same. So there's a lot of background that we have in the archaeological world, recovering stolen artifacts and bringing them back.
We've worked with hand in hand with a lot of archaeologists and anthropologists and ethnographers, all of these people that were there for the traditional cultural programs and or the archaeological programs over the years. We've been there with those individuals, and we've been blessed for them to share their knowledge and their interpretations of different things like this, and also those artifacts that were found within the ruins. And so I think a lot of this, even today, we're really just starting to understand uh, the meaning behind a lot of these things, like artifacts and things of that nature. Yes, there is an uh, interpretation of that, but a lot of times it's an educated guess. And it's really critical why these sites need to be protected. John and I, it was our job to protect these sites and to prevent them from being looted and desecrated, on a traditional uh, level. So we think that's very, very important. There's just not enough rangers to protect those areas. The Navajo Nation really is one big art site. If you look at it, everywhere you go, you're walking on the remains of ruins and previous cultures and peoples. So we all have a responsibility to protect those areas for the future, for our children and your children's children.
Well, everybody that's live or is on the replay, we really encourage you to go down to the like button, hit that like button, and also go down into the comments. Tell us what you thought about this show, things that you'd like to talk about on future shows. We will be doing a show basically every Wednesday for the next couple of weeks, getting everybody introduced to the Paranormal Rangers. They have a brand new website that is up. Joel will put up the QR code. That's right, modern technology taking you direct to the Paranormal Rangers website. Also, they are having a special right now. People who want to join their members area will get a private members show just for you every month. And we encourage you to sign up just for the email list so that you'll know whenever they're going to be on shows or do other interviews. You'll know what's going on in the community there. Please hit that like and subscribe button. And you guys can get a hold of Paranormal Rangers through their contact form there if you're interested in type of shows you do or if you want them to come on to shows. I want to thank you guys for coming on. It's been an honor to help host your inaugural podcast. I look forward to many, many more of these shows where we can really explore the Native Paranormal Crossroads.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.